put them
Yeah,
up on
no,
SoundCloud.
it was cool. It was definitely really cool, and I felt like my life was starting to kind of change, like, significantly, especially, getting, like, the opportunity to go on tour with Quinn XCII.
This podcast is about you, your journey in music, and we'll talk all about your new record as well.
Cool.
Sweet. First off, talk to me about where you were born and raised.
So I actually was born in Suffern, New York. I don't even know where that is. Um,
You've never went back.
no.
Okay.
Um, but I grew up in Connecticut, like an hour outside the city.
Okay. What was it like growing up there? Westport, is that what I read?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my family's in Westport. I loved it. I mean, I still love it. I love going back and visiting them. I love Connecticut. I feel like it gets a bad, like, I feel like everyone loves to, like, hate on Connecticut.
Really?
Um, yeah, I feel like I
This kind
always
of
see
thing?
that, like, in
I haven't
social
heard
media.
that.
But I grew up pretty close to the city, so I feel like so much of my childhood was characterized by going in for plays and shows and museums and whatnot, and then we live, like, close to the water. So I feel like I got a nice kinda, like, nautical upbringing.
That's cool. And how did you get into music?
My parents were, like, really adamant about my brother and I doing piano and guitar lessons growing up.
That's
Like,
cool.
very classical, did, like, the whole piano recital gig and everything.
How old are you when you started playing piano?
Like 3, like,
Oh,
they
wow. That's really
yeah,
young.
they had us in super early, yeah.
That's amazing, though.
I
I have
don't
a
even know what
5-year-old and I'm like trying to get him on the thing is like difficult enough. I can't imagine getting a 3-year-old on there.
yeah, I don't even remember starting at all, like, but I, like, insisted on quitting when I was in, like, 6th or 7th grade maybe.
Okay.
Um, and then I think, like, back in high school, I got, like, way more into playing again.
Oh, okay. And you
Yeah.
said guitar too?
Yeah.
Classically trained guitar?
Yeah, I mean, I, like, should be significantly better than I am at both things, but I feel like you lose so much of it when you stop taking lessons and practicing. So
Sure.
I'm not very good at all, but enough
Doubt
enough to
it.
play.
You can get by, of
Yeah.
course. Right on. And so you said high school is when you started to take music again seriously or no?
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, I feel like I got really into, like, writing songs in my free time, and college particularly as well. I really, really, like, realized how much I enjoyed doing it. And I think when I was in college too, that kinda coincided with the time that, like, music blogs were really relevant.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you remember, like, The Collection and Camelback Music and Good Music
Yeah.
All Day and yeah, all
Uh-huh.
that stuff. Um, and so I would, like, send all my music to them, like, all my SoundCloud covers and stuff, and,
Is that where it
fortunately
started for you, SoundCloud?
yeah, I think SoundCloud is definitely where, like, my manager heard me for the first time. Um,
Oh, wow. Is
yeah,
it
and
based off a
that's
cover? You said you put cover songs up there?
yeah, I honestly you'd have to ask him, I don't really know.
It's all good.
Um, but, yeah, I feel like that era of SoundCloud was, like, really big for pop music, and
Mhm.
that's kinda how I got connected with, like, Quinn XCII and AOK and Jeremy Zucker.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Real quick on the SoundCloud thing, was that something that you had started while you were in high school, or did all of this kinda start,
I
starting to unfold in college?
Yeah, it was mostly college.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I used SoundCloud religiously in high school for, like, listening to music.
okay, but it
But
wasn't
I
until
didn't
college you
yeah, I
started
didn't really
posting.
start yeah.
When did you were writing songs in high school too, or
A
mainly
little
in
bit, a
college?
little bit.
Little
Yeah.
bit, little bit. What was the like, what made you start writing songs? Was there something that you're like, "I'm" like, how'd you realize that you're pretty good at it, or you're very good at it, but at the time
Um,
realize that you're good at it?
I definitely don't think that had any I definitely don't think I was good at it initially. I think it's something that obviously it's like a skill that you develop.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know if I got particularly decent at it until I was in college. Um, but I don't know, it just felt really like a natural outlet for me. Like it felt, um, I don't know, some people like to go work out or take on like various hobbies and
Mhm.
whatnot. And I feel like for me, like my outlet has always been writing songs and playing music.
Were your friends and people you're acquainted with in college, did they know what you're doing, or were you just throwing them up online and kind of keeping it secretive?
Yeah, it was kind of like a mix.
Okay.
Um, like I wasn't super vocal about it in school.
Mhm.
Um, I definitely was more vocal about it once I like got a record deal and like had management and like it felt a little bit more real.
Mhm.
Um, but initially I was definitely super timid and I didn't really talk about it that much.
Sure. And it wasn't and that all kind of came together with SoundCloud. Your manager found you, and that is that what kind of got the ball rolling?
Yeah, pretty much. This so I signed to Ultra Records
Mhm.
initially when I was a sophomore in college, I want to say. Feels like it was so long ago. Um, yeah, I think I was a sophomore in college, and I think that kind of allowed me to start like doing writing sessions, and I got linked up with AOK, who was managed by our manager Jesse.
Mhm.
And so he like introduced me in person in New York City one weekend, and yeah, I think SoundCloud was kind of like where they had heard what I was doing. Um, yeah, I don't know. Everything felt super organic, which is cool.
Mhm. Once you got hooked up with Ultra, was that kind of that must have been a big moment, I would think, if you're putting your songs up on SoundCloud and now it's like a record label wants to, bring you in, put you involved in all of this. Was that a pretty cool experience to have?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when you're in college too, it feels like everyone around you is working to go into finance and to go into they're doing pre-med to go to med school or pre-law. And so I felt like I was surrounded by a lot of people on more conventionally accepted kind of career paths.
Sure.
Yeah, so it definitely was like, okay, hey, I'm actually doing something with music.
Yeah, it, like, validated what
Yeah, it was
you're going
definitely
for.
validating
Were
for
you
sure.
going to school for music or
No,
something
no,
totally
no,
different? Oh,
no,
okay.
not at
And
all.
so once you get this deal, was that like what was the next thing that happened for you? Was that when you put out your EP, the first EP?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I got to put out an EP with Ultra, and that was my first like real experience putting out music, like with management and with a label.
What was
And
that
that
like? I'm sure a lot different than putting
yeah,
it up on
no,
SoundCloud.
it was cool. It was definitely really cool, and I felt like my life was starting to kind of change like significantly, especially getting like the opportunity to go on tour with Quinn XCII, because
Mhm.
that was pivotal because I like couldn't physically stay in school any longer. Um,
Oh, that was when you decided to stop going to college?
yeah, so that
Well, I
that
guess that makes
felt like
sense.
yeah,
Tour
exactly.
with Quinn 92, like staying in debt in college.
Yeah. That felt like more of a turning point than anything that happened prior to that, just because I physically had to go, like I don't know, I had to, like, make a decision, I could put out music while I was in college and stay in school, and music could be the side thing, and
Uh-huh.
going on tour forced me to make a decision to make music, like, to put it at the forefront of
Mhm.
everything, so that was, like, terrifying, but very pivotal.
And with that tour, like how change life changing was that once you get on the road? Had you ever had that experience before?
No, and I never performed before really to any capacity, so that
Oh wow.
yeah, so that taught me obviously that I, like, love performing, so
Hmm.
that was really important, and how do you know you love something if you've never done it before?
Sure.
Like, I had no idea, and then I was pretty hooked, and, um, COVID aside, it's been how I spend, like, most of my time for the last 4 years.
Sure. I mean, because that tour with Quinn 92 really wasn't that long ago if you look at it with in the sense. I mean, it was, but it wasn't if you look at how we lost like a year and a half with
Yeah.
COVID, right? So at
Yeah, well,
least
I
you
guess I'm
go ahead.
24, I went when I was 21, so it was, like, 3.5, 4 years ago.
Mhm. And you're still obviously putting music out with Quinn 92. You just did a huge tour with him. So
Yeah,
that must be cool
very
to
full
kind of,
circle.
yeah, full circle for sure. So after that first record and that first tour, you put out two what mixtapes that are just on your own.
Yeah, so I did 2 independent mixtapes, which was awesome. I really enjoyed being independent. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like the state of the music industry has, like, increasingly allowed for people to be independent, so that was, like, a really cool experience. I'm glad I, like, got to have a portion of my career, kinda done that way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was awesome, and we got to tour them and everything. We, like, went straight back on the road after the Quinn tour, and I toured pretty relentlessly, like, up until the pandemic.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And you put another record out with Jeremy Zucker, the Brent record,
Yeah.
and Brent too. And you did those. What you did like a live internet version of the record too? Was
Yeah,
that
that
over
was super fun.
during quarantine?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Was that somebody? How'd you meet him? Was that somebody that you became acquainted with over SoundCloud back then, or is it? Was it
yeah, and we're
more?
on the same management as well too, and we're actually on Republic too, so we're on the same label. So there are, like, a lot of factors that brought
Makes
us
sense.
together, and I think, like, yeah, like, there were, like, a lot of things that had to naturally happen for the Brent stuff to kinda, like, come to fruition, so that was cool.
Cool. And that a record you guys planning on touring together and COVID shut it down or
We never, like, really seriously approached the idea of touring it together. It's something
uh-huh.
that we've talked about a lot. I think that it will happen eventually.
Okay.
I think it's just kinda contingent on our individual circumstances with our own albums and stuff, but we
Right.
do talk about it. It's something we definitely wanna do.
That's cool. And you've put a lot of music out within the last year and a half, 2 years. I mean, you
Yeah,
put
it
out two
feels that way now.
records. I
Yeah.
mean, so where were you when the pandemic happened?
Well, I was on tour,
You were
and
on tour.
yeah, I was on tour, and we had to obviously, like, cancel the last week of shows of tour, because it was, like, mid-March, and I'm fortunate we, like, got most of the tour in, but then I flew, like, directly home to my parents, and
Where were you in the United States or were you outside of the country?
yeah, we flew home from, Minneapolis, I wanna say.
Okay.
And I went home because, like, we obviously, as a world, didn't know that this was going to be such an ongoing thing.
Right.
So I was like, "Okay, I'll go stay with my parents for these 2 weeks." And because initially, right, we were all told, "All right, we'll do, like, a 2-week quarantine."
Right.
So
And then
I
like
went.
2 years and 2 weeks later or what?
Yes, so I was, like, paying rent on my spot in New York City and everything for, like, 10 months that I was living with my parents.
Oh my.
Um Yeah, so it was, like, not on purpose that I quarantined with them, but I guess it was much more fun than, like, had I been quarantining, like, alone in my apartment. Um,
Yeah, and New York was like gnarly hotspot for it too. I
yeah,
mean,
at least in Connecticut, we, like, could go outside, and there are parks and the beach and everything, so, I think I definitely enjoyed my time more than I would have if I had gotten stuck in, like, New York City.
sure.
But it was just, like, funny, I feel like a lot of people I know, they, like, went home to visit their parents for, like, those 2 weeks and
Uh-huh.
ended up getting stuck there with their
Stuck there.
parents. Yeah. No one I know, like, stayed in the city.
Well, I can see why. I mean, you're not only was it like this gnarly hotspot, but like you said, you couldn't really go outside. I mean,
Where are you based?
I'm in Nashville now, but I'm from
Okay,
Southern California, so I was
okay,
born and
cool.
raised there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Nashville, you guys probably kinda had a similar experience to me, right? Where, like, there's a lot more open space, so you could be
Yeah.
outside of it,
And
and
people kind of, yeah, it's a lot less restrictive here, I would say.
yeah.
But I like majority of it, I was in California, and it was
Oh,
pretty
no way.
similar to New
Did you,
York.
like, go back to visit your family or anything?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Same
It went
kinda
from,
situation.
yeah. I mean, it's totally different with the regulations that were there in place versus where I'm at here in the
Yeah,
like
that makes
suburbs of
sense. It was
Nashville.
Connecticut and New York are pretty, like, similar in how they operate, so I feel
Okay.
like the restrictions were pretty much the same.
Gives you
Um,
more space to go out
yeah,
and
like
about.
you could go, I mean, you would wear a mask, but like you could go to the beach for a run or to walk the dogs or to the dog park with masks on and stuff. Whereas like in New York City, I literally think people barely left their apartments other than to like grocery shop.
Sure. Yeah, they shut a lot of the beaches down and all that in San Diego.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I forgot about that because I have a ton of friends in LA and they said the beaches were closed. You couldn't even
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, you couldn't go to the beach. Like it was pretty locked
Which is like
down, which is
so absurd
unfortunate.
because like you're not gonna spread COVID outside at the beach.
Right.
Like that makes no sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're able to be with family and be outside a little bit. When did you start writing? I mean, you put out 2 records within the last, 2 years. Tell me about How to Be Human. Was that something you had started? Well, I guess that came out right before the
Right
pandemic, right?
before.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
that
I'm
came out in
super lucky.
January. Yeah,
Yeah,
so you're touring that record when everything shut down.
exactly.
Got it. Okay. I was getting my timeline confused here with all the
No,
amount of
it's like
time that we're
all
stuck in this COVID thing.
we were lucky because we got to do like 75% of the tour,
That's
80% of the
good.
tour even.
That's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we got to do like a big we did all our promo and everything, honestly. So I know a lot of people's albums came out in like March, April, May, so they
Right.
unfortunately couldn't tour.
So you're able to, yeah, get a lot of that taken care of, which is great. And
Yeah.
then, so the newest record just came out, like 10 days ago or so. Um, Tell me, so when did you start writing this album? Were you, you know, hoping that, okay, in 2 weeks we'll be able to get back on the road and kind of focus on that other album cycle? Or when do you start writing this next record?
Yeah, I mean, for us, our mindset was like, this is going to be a temporary thing. We are going to be able to get back out and finish this tour. We had like a whole second fall leg planned for the tour as well. So it took me a while to get to a place where I understood that like the How to Be Human era was not going to get finished.
Sure.
And like I had to kind of come to terms with that and find closure in that. And once I did that, then I was able to kind of open up my mind to the idea of starting a new project.
Mhm.
I struggled like a lot, as I'm guessing most people did, like being so isolated.
Uh-huh.
It's like I'm sure you understand, like we're like creative people, and it's really hard to like be creative when you're quarantining with your parents for
Right. You're not living
a really
life. You're
long
just
time.
looking at the same walls.
Yeah, exactly. And like I don't have a studio at my parents' house. Like I don't have anywhere to work there. Um, and I think kind of what opened a lot of creative doors for me was obviously getting to write Brent with Jeremy. We like quarantined and COVID tested, and we went and stayed. Like we stayed on in like the studio on a farm for a
Mhm.
week together.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, yeah, and so
In New York or Connecticut?
New York,
Oh,
upstate New
cool.
York. Yeah. So that was my first time like even really like seeing people other than my parents and like spending time writing. So that felt nice. And then so AOK's parents have a house in Newport, Rhode Island.
Mhm.
And so after like a lot of convincing and a lot of negative COVID tests, my parents let me go work with like Quinn XCII, a producer named Hazy Eyes, and AOK in Newport for a couple weeks.
Oh,
And like,
wow.
yeah, and getting to kind of immerse myself in that creative environment again was like the only thing that opened the floodgates for me in terms of writing.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, this whole album like came collaboratively for the most part.
Oh, wow. Was there a majority of it written when you were at AOK's parents'
Yeah,
place?
we did like 6 songs on the album there. I did 4 on my own, 4 or 5 on my own throughout the course of like the last year and a half.
Mhm.
And then I did like another 3 or 4 in doing like various writing trips like once we got vaccinated and stuff.
Okay. Did you record a lot of the record at that house too?
Yeah, well every song that we wrote there, I pretty much kept the demo vocals for because I was like we're never gonna beat what the emotions were like in that moment.
Right. I've heard artists talk about that, where
Yeah.
it's like you can't recreate the kind of the energy behind the vocal take that you did, for example.
Yeah, I always so like Mr. Brightside is one of my favorite songs in the
Okay.
world.
Yeah.
And like so the version that came out is like the OG demo, apparently. I don't like know them personally or anything, so this is just like a story I've heard. But I've heard that like they tried to re-record it and like refinesse it and it never felt as good at all.
Really?
So
I didn't
yeah,
know
they
that.
put out like the demo version of it. And
That's
I
really
just like have
interesting.
always loved that story. So I like try to recut vocals if we can, um, because like you have time to think about how you want things to sound.
Mhm.
And with this album, we kept the demo vocals for like most of the album.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just because you're gonna have to go back and try to recreate that energy, right? And
yeah.
sometimes it just
And
doesn't
it's nice
work.
to do it when you have like everyone who helped write the song in the room and you're feeding off like the momentum of writing it all in like the course of a few hours. So yeah, it's fun.
That's so cool. What about like "Stay Next to Me"? Was that a song that you wrote in that session? I chatted with Quinn XCII, like kind of in the beginning of the quarantine, but I can't
Oh, nice.
remember what he said about that.
Yeah, so they went earlier to write his album.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, and they wrote "Stay Next to Me" then, and then sent it to me, and I was like, "This is freaking awesome! Like, of course, let's do
Mhm.
it." Um, so I cut a verse that like they had already written, and then we wrote the bridge together. Um, so they like most of the magic happened in Newport though
Okay.
when they were writing it.
That's awesome. And then when he's on your new record, "Calling All Angels," and was that song done then when you were
Yeah, we
together?
did that all
Okay.
together
Got
in
it.
Newport, yeah.
Okay.
That
That
was
is
super fun.
awesome. That is so awesome.
Yeah.
And you just wrapped up the tour with Ty Verdes and Quinn XCII?
Yeah, I got home, like, just about 2 I think, like, 2 weeks ago today.
That is awesome. I mean, was that your first tour back or shows back
Oh, yeah.
from quarantine?
Yeah, we had done, like, some of those drive-in shows, but they're not quite the same. Um,
Yeah, I can
this was
imagine.
obviously yeah, like, all of our first tour backs or our first tours back, and, it was nuts because we got to play really big rooms, like, granted that
Hey,
was,
you
like
guys are
given
playing
that
huge
was, like, a
you're playing
package.
amphitheaters, right?
Yeah, and, like, neither Quinn or I had played rooms that big. I think it was Ty's first tour ever.
Yeah.
So just, coming off the heels of the pandemic, it was really special.
That is cool. Yeah, Quinn or when you guys were on tour, I interviewed Ty, and you guys had just played Nashville like 2 days before. Like
Oh, cool.
the way it didn't sync up, so we could do it in person or whatever. But yeah, he told me that it was his first tour. I wonder if he kind of have a similar story to you, where Quinn '92 was his your first tour. He took him along. Like, was it cool to kind of pass some of that down to somebody who hadn't had that experience before?
I mean, I think something that's really special about Quinn is his crew is awesome, and, like, there's a really great culture on the tour, like, everyone's so nice, hardworking, there's no, like, boundaries or hierarchy or, like, any dumb
Mhm.
stuff like that, and, like, just everyone hangs out with everyone, and it's a really like, there's 40 people on a tour that big, and everyone is gets to know each other, and, ooh, sorry, my dog is
Okay.
asleep, and he's having a nightmare. So if
Oh,
you hear him, that's why.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
You
I
can
just
wake
heard
him
him. I was
up
like,
if
"Quinn, Quinn."
you.
Um, yeah, so I think, like, that's something that, like, Quinn taught to me,
Uh-huh.
and that I hope we kinda collectively showed to Ty.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm sure, like, if that's his first experience touring, he probably that opened his eyes to, like, how a crew can operate the way it did for
Yeah.
me.
I figured I'm sure that there's other horror stories of people on their first tour versus, obviously you guys had became such good friends, you and Quinn '92, that you continued to tour, wrote songs together. I would imagine being you guys uplifting Ty just as much as he probably did to you. Whereas if you're on I don't know. I can't think of it. I'm not going to throw a band out there, but like if you were touring with another artist, maybe you wouldn't have the same collective vibe.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hope so. I can only hope. I don't know, like personally what his experience was, but Ty's awesome. We really enjoyed having him, so I hope it's mutual.
That's cool. And so the record's out. Are you constantly writing? Like once you finish that record, were you looking forward to the next thing or?
I haven't written since getting home. I've only been home for 2 weeks and the album came out, and so it was it's been like a little bit hectic. And I also just moved, and I moved like literally 2 weeks before leaving for tour. So now that I'm like home, we're building a studio that's actually almost done. And like
exciting.
I'm still yeah, so like I hopefully in a few weeks I'll kind of have like a functional place to start working again.
Amazing. That is so cool. And thank you so much, Chelsea, for doing this. I really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I have
Awesome
one
to
more
meet you.
question. One more question for you if you have time. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yeah, totally. I think that right now we're in this age where the music industry is happening like really rapidly. Like just everything is being consumed quickly, and I think content um really is king, like as kind of weird as that is. And I think there's no such thing as like deluding yourself anymore. So I think just putting your songs out there on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, TikTok, however you can. Just like put yourself in front of as many eyes as you can, um, and just show people kind of who you are. There's like a lot of ways to do that now. So.